I like to use this video to try and describe driving assemblies within sub-assemblies and in themselves. I am using Inventor 2017, but the rules apply to most older versions. Let's start with just a single assembly and a driving constraint. This breakover center clamp is driven by a flush constraint on the front. If I drive it, you can see the motion. Now let's take this assembly and place it into another assembly as a sub-assembly. If I go to drive it, you'll see the drive function is missing. This is because Inventor requires us to make the assembly or the sub-assembly adaptive within the top level assembly. Once I do that, then now the drive is available. Okay, let's go a step further. The next assembly consists of 3 sub-assemblies of the same clamp. They're different colors, but they're the same. What I like to do is make the first one adaptive. So when I right click on it, the adaptive is not available. That brings up another rule of Inventor. You can only have an assembly adaptive in one other assembly at the same time. So where was it made adaptive? Back in this one. I could either remove it here or back in the original assembly. You'll find under Document Settings, Modeling, and a check mark saying it's been used in the assembly as adaptive. I could take it off here or the other one. It's up to you. When I go back, you'll see it drops off automatically. Now going back to the other assembly, you'll see now I can very easily make this adaptive. When I drive it, you'll see all 3 react the same because they're the same sub-assembly. Now there is a way to make them not work together. So if I go back to my browser and select the other 2 and make them flexible, I gotta select the other 2 and make them flexible. This means they can move on their own without being governed by the original. So now when I drive the original, they do not move. They're independent. They're flexible. They can be driven by other methods such as pushing on the front of them or whatever. They're both independent. Let's look at this idea on a little higher level. Here I have a crankshaft, pistons, and cylinder walls. The major engine has been removed for clarity. I'm going to make this run. First of all, let's go through the parts. The piston is actually an assembly in itself. It is put on the crankshaft, and if I want to drive this, I really don't need to make the piston assemblies adaptive because, as you can see, when it's running, they are not moving. They're just going around the motions, not following the cylinder. So they're just floating in space. They don't need to be made adaptive. Now if I move on to the engine, they are in the cylinders and they must move in relation to the cylinders. So let's go through this. First of all, to drive the crankshaft assembly, it must be made adaptive because it is a sub-assembly. Now if I drive it, it's going to fail because the pistons must flex. So what I need to do is make the pistons either adaptive. Let's see, where are the pistons? The piston assemblies right here. Make them adaptive, which would solve the problem. Now I can drive with no problem. I do have another ability too. I can take the adaptivity off in this case, and in the actual piston assembly, take that off. I can make them flexible. Flexible works in this case because the pistons are being guided by the cylinder heads, so it will work just fine. They don't need to be adaptive. They'll just conform to the cylinder heads. So if I drive this, right here, you'll see it works fine with flexible also. It all depends on your constraints and what you need to move, whether you need to make them flexible, adaptive, or both. Thank you.